Hello there guys, it's Captain Invisible here and welcome to another online battle for Medieval 2 Total War. This is another subscribers battle video, so I'm going to be hiding the mini-map just so you guys don't know who sent it in until the last second, when I will tell you obviously. So yeah, subscribers replay. I've not done one of these in a while, so I think it's about time I did one, just to show you guys some different players' tactics, and obviously to discuss the players' tactics myself, because I mean, when you get on the battlefield, it's hard to remember the tactics that you know from your past experiences, but as soon as you watch a replay, you can pick out some very interesting tactics and very noticeable mistakes, and a lot of players kick themselves for it, but that's my job to be honest. That's going to be my job in these subscribers battles, and my own. Obviously I noticed some mistakes in my own battles, but as I say, I'm going to start to talk about the tactics behind some of the factions and the units, as opposed to just telling you what's happening whilst it's happening. So we'll start off with Venice being commanded by Brothel Bouncer. I'm sure he's not really a brothel bouncer, but if he is, it's a very endearing job to have. So he's brought 4 units of the Pavis crossbow militia. I believe the crossbow militia are the only ones that Venice can get. They can't get these standard Pavis crossbowmen. And then for infantry, he's got 4 units of Venetian heavy infantry with armour, attack, and I assume the chevron as well, judging by the little flags. If you guys didn't know, the little flags here indicate a chevron. I'm not sure how it adds it up, but I think that's just one experienced chevron. And then the armour's pretty noticeable because they're wearing pretty heavy armour there, so that's always a noticeable change. And then 4 units of dismounted feudal knights, again with armour and possibly attack, but no chevron this time, because feudal knights don't need chevrons. Feudal knights don't need chevrons, they just fight. They just need blood on their swords. And then, quite rightly so, a Carraccio standard to help keep the Venetian morale in check, because Venice has really terrible morale. I mean, you're just god-awful on a lot of its units, so you really have to use the standard to get the most out of them. So cavalry-wise, he's got a couple of units of Stratiots, one at this side, and another one here, I believe. Now, a lot of people say these Stratiots are overpowered, and I agree to some extent, but they do have quite shitty morale, so yeah, if you can get them in a bad position, they'll rout, and they rout really easily, so they're only bad if you don't keep them in check, and if you can check them and you get them pinned down, they die. So, and they're a decent light cav. I believe they are Albanian in origin, so Venice drawing its troops from Albania with the Stratiots. And then he's probably got 3 units of Hospitaller, very nice heavy cavalry. The Hospitallers being better than the Templar Knights. That's not opinion, that is actual fact. The Hospitallers get more armour upgrades, so they get upgraded to this full plate armour, as opposed to the partial plate, which you'll see on the feudal knights. And again, the Templar Knights, when you upgrade them, they get partial plate, which isn't as good as full plate for some weird reason or another. And then he's got an early period General's Bodyguard. Not sure about that. Again, I don't know whether this is high period or whether... Oh no, it can't be high period because of the feudal knights. Never mind. Feudal knights aren't a high period unit at all. So next, his ally is V.O.C. belg in command of the Papal States. Oh, I forgot to mention as well. I do like the Venetian army here. It's very well thought out and pretty well balanced. But yeah, back to the Papal States. He's brought looks like 5 units of Pavi's crossbowmen. A bit of a waste of money because the Papal States do get the crossbow militia, which are basically exactly the same unit. So he could have spent money just getting one of those and saved himself a bit of cash. And then for his cavalry, he's got a huge mix of Hospitallers, Knights Templar, small Hospitallers, some broken Lancers, an interesting unit. No shields, so they don't do well against missiles, but not a bad charging unit. Kind of a shock cav type unit. Although, to be honest, you can argue that all cavalry is shock cav due to having Lancers and a powerful charge. And then some more Hospitallers, so an interesting mix of cavalry. I say interesting with a bit of salt. He's obviously got no upgrades on his cavalry, which is it's gonna be important in a lot of battles. He might be able to get away with it simply because he's got so much cavalry, and he's got spearmen as well. But as I say, you really want to put most of your money into your cavalry with those upgrades. And then infantry-wise, he's got 2 Papal Guard, presumably to support his cavalry, and then some, I think, 3 units of Broken Lancers and 4 dismounted feudal knights. The standard infantry, in which all should be measured, are the feudal knights. And then he's got a general's bodyguard, a late period one, so not making the same mistake as Venice. Although he has made a new mistake, and I'll give you guys a minute to think what that might be. You guessed it. I hope you've guessed it, because it's really important for the Papal States. He's missing the Great Cross. Now, you could argue that the Great Cross isn't that important, and that he could probably pull this out without the Great Cross. But to be honest, the Great Cross for the Italian factions, if you can bring a standard, you really should, because it helps with morale. And the same with Venice, where its troops have low morale. These broken lancers, these types of infantry do not have the best of morale at all, and if you don't support their morale, you end up losing them. And as soon as they rout, that's it. You've got a big hole in your line that you're gonna have to fill with something else. The feudal knights will hold out, but again, the cross will help with these lesser infantry units' morale. So you really should think about bringing the Great Cross, even for the Papal States. And then moving on to the opponents, we've got Benny 971 in command of the Byzantine Empire. And I have to say, I'm a bit disappointed in this army. It's not the best, and I'll explain why when we get into it. So it's got 4 units of the Byzantine Guard Archers, I believe 4 units. Yeah, 4 units of Byzantine Guard Archers and a unit of Trebizond Archers. So he's managed to save some money by bringing 4 units of the elite archers and then 1 of the slightly less quality archers. It's probably still way too much archers for the Byzantines, but he's at least he's saved himself some money by bringing the Trebizond and not just 5 units of the Byzantine Guard Archers. Where he has messed up though is in his infantry. All he's done is spam these dismounted Latincon. And for those of you that don't know about infantry in units in Medieval 2 Total War, as soon as you bring 4 of a unit, the price goes up for that unit, and it goes up every time you buy a unit. So he's got sort of 4 units of Latincon, and then you're gonna buy an extra 3 units. So this one's more expensive. This one's more expensive than this one, so it's gone up again, and then it's gone up even more with this one. So he's really wasted his money on this infantry, especially considering that the Byzantines actually get these cheaper swordsmen, the Byzantine infantry, and the dismounted Byzantine lancers. So yeah, a real waste of money there. But you know, I think Benny is a new player. I've seen him in a couple of other replays, and you know, it doesn't seem to perform as well as, or his army seem to be a bit strange. So, and obviously his performance is a little slow. So, I'll give him the benefit of the doubt that he's new. But again, guys, you only bring 4 of a unit. If you have to bring 5, bring 5, but don't bring any more than 5 because you'll just be wasting your money. And again, his cavalry is a bit lackluster. He's got 3 units of General's Bodyguard as well as his actual General in his General's Bodyguard. So 4 units of General's Bodyguard. And the General's Bodyguard price actually goes up every time you get one. So he bought this one, and then this one became more expensive, and this one became more expensive than that one. It's just a big waste of money. And the General's Bodyguards are good. I'm not going to deny that. But again, huge waste of money there on cavalry. And then he's got 3 units of horse archers. I don't see horse archers that often, so it'll be interesting to see. Although the Kunman horse archers are a bit weak. They're not the best. Certainly not the best that the Byzantines can bring. But you know, horse archers are quite interesting, so we'll see what I can do with those. And then his ally is Thracia. Yep. In command of the Portuguese, and I like what he's done with his missiles, spreading his crossbowmen out so thin. It's going to make them really hard to kill. You always have to decide whether spreading your men out is going to be to the best use of them, because as I'll explain later, spreading your crossbowmen out can be detrimental to your own missile capabilities. As I say, I'll explain that later, but it definitely makes them harder to kill. So he's got that going for him there with his crossbowmen. And then he's got his cavalry mixed in with his infantry here, some Knights of Santiago, some Conquistadors, and some mounted crossbowmen as well. So some interesting missile capabilities on this side. And then he's general in a General's Bodyguard. This battle was, I think, a max of 7 cavalry, so everyone bringing quite a nice helping of cavalry. I don't know what the other rules were, but I think it was 30k per team, so it's going to be 15k armies. We've got some dismounted Portuguese knights up here, almost supporting the cavalry. And a line of, I believe this is 4 units of dismounted feudal knights and 2 units of these swordsman militia. Is it 2 or 3? Yeah, it might be 3 units of these swordsman militia, and then some more dismounted Portuguese knights. The swordsman militia are okay, but they're okay for a cheap swordsman, but really you want to avoid bringing them unless you absolutely have to. I think having a couple of conquistadors would have sufficed. Even if you're not going to upgrade them, you know, having some conquistadors is always a nice idea for armies. So let's get into this, and we shall play the battle. So both armies have both sort of sides have pretty decent missile capabilities, so they're going to want to use that to the greatest effect. Portugal and the Byzantines having horse archers, so that'll help them at some point in the battle. You know, they'll want to look to use that, and you always want to look to use your horse archers when the enemy is not prepared for them. So there would be no point in sending his horse archers up here, his crossbowmen, and just sitting here and you're trying to shoot at these guys, because the Stradios are fast like cavalry and they will catch your horse archers. And then with these crossbowmen, since they're not in range, they could have just shot at the missile cav, and your missile cav would die. But as I say, where you want to use them is where the enemy is distracted. So if he moves into range now, and your crossbowmen are fighting against him, then you could use your horse archers to harass this flank. As you can see, the Stradiots are moving away, and this heavy cav's moving over. So that would be a nice time to use these mounted crossbowmen. So you want to use your horse archers like that, just to harass the enemy and really distract them. So it looks like Benny's not spread his archers out as well as he could do. They're still in. They look like they're in loose formation actually, but they're sort of in loose formation mixed in with each other. It's a bit strange. And here Benny makes his first mistake. Again, he's not distracted the Pavis crossbowmen with his own archers. He's just moved his horse archers up, and they've taken a nasty volley from these unengaged Pavis crossbowmen. So yeah, just moving your horse archers up on their own is not a good idea. You want to support them, or you want to distract the enemy first. These mounted crossbowmen of Portugal are sort of enticing the enemy cavalry out of position. Again, this is a good use of mounted crossbowmen, and gets a few kills from it against these Stradiots. And the missile fight, I believe, is all underway. So these Pavis crossbowmen can't support their cavalry against the mounted crossbowmen, although he's going to try. But again, this is what Portugal will want. He will want these Pavis crossbowmen distracted with the horse archers, and it'll allow him to get more firepower down. So yeah, just a quick overview of missile formations. It's true that the thinner lines allow your missiles to survive better, and these thicker ones are going to suffer more casualties, but it's important to note that the thicker lines, the deeper formations, allow more of your units to focus fire. So whereas these two units will be able to fire at this one or this one, and these two units will be able to fire on this one and this one, no three units can fire on the same unit. Whereas here, these three units can fire on to this one and possibly this one. I don't think they'll all be able to reach this one. But that's the joy of having thicker formations with your crossbowmen and archers. You actually get a nice focused fire point, and it really does help in missile fights. So the Venetian cavalry has been drawn off into this position, which is highly exposed because it's so close to the Portuguese lines that the Portuguese can send cavalry to support, and it's going to be suffering damage due to crossbow fire. But the Stradiots, using their speed, have managed to get around the enemy cav formations and are going to crash into these Pavis crossbowmen. This is what you want to use your light cavalry for, just to hit exposed enemy archers and really get into difficult positions for the enemy. But the Stradiots reveal their weakness to morale, and they are going to break, but they will come back. There's plenty of numbers there. So it looks like the Venetian cavalry is being fended off for now, and it has done some damage, but not enough to this side. Over on this side, looks like the horse archers of the Byzantines tried the same tactic of bunching up in this position, and obviously they've got a face full of crossbow bolts. And it looks like over here the broken lancers doing what they do best and hitting enemy positions hard and fast. So doing really well there with those broken lancers, and the Stradiots come in and catch these archers unawares as well. And it's always nice to support your allies, and if you don't, this will happen. these Stradiots are going to go crazy on these guard archers and get some nice hits into these troops, and they are then fast enough to pull away and let chaos ensue. Looks like though the Portuguese using their mounted crossbowmen to great effect against these Pavis crossbowmen. Even mounted crossbowmen are really good in at charging enemy missiles, but unfortunately they've got stuck in this melee, and the heavy knights have come in to swiftly see them off, and they are going to route back to the Portuguese lines there. So the missile fight is actually going Portugal's way here. Despite that Venetian Stradiot charge, he has evened out the odds with the missile engagement, and there are some Pavis crossbowmen units not really in great position, so he's going to want to move these guys up. However, the Byzantine army is not doing too well in the skirmish or the cavalry engagement, and again these Byzantine cavalry are just wheeling up and trying to get shots off. I'm assuming against the Pavis crossbowmen, but Pavis crossbowmen have immense missile defense. You really don't want to waste your ammo against them. And he's done this about three, 4 times, and he's only got six kills for this. So not good at all, and he's really suffering damage here. Presumably also from friendly fire, because he's so blobbed up in this position. So yeah, a real waste of missile cav here. But on the Portuguese right flank, he's using his missiles again to try and draw out the enemy cav. And this is what you want to use missile cav for. This is just one unit of mounted crossbowmen, and it's drawn out the enemy cav. It's hit these exposed Pavis crossbowmen, and it's really made Venice's life really hard on this flank. Made it a real pain in the ass to actually just sit there and take it. So he's had to react to this, and this is what you want to make your opponent do. You want to make your opponent react to your own actions as opposed to having everything his way. So the looks like the Papal States are a bit sick of waiting and are going to charge forward. They have enough infantry to take this, but I want to point out really quickly with a pause here that Portugal is really missing a trick here. This is what makes and breaks these kinds of battles. So the Papal States have rushed forward their infantry. All their cavalry is on this flank. You've got all the Templars and the Hospitallers on this flank with the broken lancers. You've even got the spearmen over here as well. So there is nothing, practically nothing defending the Papal States left flank, defending these infantry. And these feudal knights are expensive, so defending these guys would have been key, and they are completely exposed. Even the Venetian cav isn't really in a position to support. I mean, the Stradiots are coming over, but they're not that fast. And certainly the Portuguese cav is well within striking distance here to engage these two units. But it has to be now. It has to be right this second, because you can see this gap from the Portuguese cavalry flank. All of these 3 units are exposed. Any units down here are really going to be blocked by these by the Venetian heavy infantry. So not the Venetians, the Byzantine heavy infantry. So you really want to utilize these positions. So what we're going to do now is we are going to almost count how long this is going to take. Unfortunately, I don't have a stopwatch. Well, I do have this clock. Let's use this clock. So he should be charging now. He should be charging right this second. Let's see how long it takes him to realise that this is exposed. So we'll do it in 3, 2, 1. Okay, so he's seen it now. He's going in now. So about 20 seconds. To be honest, he could have seen it. He could have seen it was going to happen when the infantry was moving forward. But he did notice it eventually. So yeah, I'll give him credit that he is paying attention to the battlefield, and that's you want to exploit these gaps, because now this heavy infantry's flank is exposed, and it's going to take some heavy damage. But unfortunately, those 20 seconds have given the Stradiots time to really get into position to defend against this. So every second counts in this, and as soon as he saw the Papal States infantry moving forward, he should have been on top of that. The Venetian cavalry was over on this, over in the centre here, not really in position. He should have seen that. He should have gone, right, my cavalry needs to get into position, and I'm going to charge that, and it's going to really break that flank and help my Byzantine allies infantry really get into position. But now we've got some Stradiots coming in, and they're going to help blunt the heavy cavalry. Although they go back for some strange reason, which allows this charge to come into effect. They really shouldn't have allowed that, and that's going to the morale is still steady, but it's going to cause some problems. And then you've got a nice cheeky conquistador unit get over here. It should really be charging into one of these, into the back of these units now, but unfortunately it's going to get swarmed by cavalry, so a bit late on the old attack order there. And then the Venetian lines engage, and this is what you really don't want. Venetian heavy infantry in your into your own heavy infantry. These knights should be well on top of this. These Portuguese knights do catch these Stradiots. They do take some damage, but that's going to be it's going to be good knight Stradiots, I believe. Shaken, wavering, yet they're going to rout shortly, but it gives them chance for these feudal knights to get into these cavalry. And even these Venetian heavy infantry want a piece. Not good at all. So it looks like Portugal had this flank sort of exposed here. You had all these infantry sort of out on this flank, and it looks like Venice was only engaged with four units of heavy infantry and held up the line there. So it did have some reserves here, but there was all this Portuguese infantry that could have flanked around, got into here. And instead it's sort of stuck in a blob against infantry and cavalry. So I'm not sure what his plan was with this, whether it was going to be a flank or not, but he should have really utilised it as a heavy flank and just pounded the Venetian flank here. But unfortunately the Venetian heavy infantry, doing what they do best, have seen off the feudal knights of Thracia. Or Thracian, yeah. So yeah, it's tough luck there, and even though he's put a lot of pressure on this flank, it looks like the Venetians have support here, and they are going to be able to hold that. A few decent charges into the flanks of these units, but this general's bodyguard unit is trapped in melee now, which it really doesn't need to be in against heavy infantry, should I say.
We are blessed. The enemy general is dead. We have sent
the Byzantines are suffering badly against the hands of the Papal States cavalry, and with this flank exposed, their infantry is going to fail them in this match. So the Byzantines have been broken at this point, and the Portuguese are now exposed. Again, because he blobbed up his infantry on this flank, he's going to get outflanked by a couple of these units. As soon as these units break, which they are now, all these Venetian heavy infantry can now get on this flank, and those feudal knights and the Venetian heavy infantry are going to be tough. This was a nice charge by the conquistadors, avoiding these infantry and this cavalry and getting stuck into the Venetian flank. If if you can call it a flank, but again, there's too much at this point, and there's still a lot of Venetian cavalry dotted about the place, and still a lot of Venetian infantry. These swordsmen militia can only do so much, and then they'll break.
Praise to our lord! Our men have slain the enemy general. Now his men will lose heart.
Some desperate charges by Portugal, but it's not going to be enough. There's just way too much cavalry, and then there's basically the entire Papal States army arriving. So it's going to be, you know, the end here, and the swordsman militia realise that all hope is lost, and they break. So yeah, this was an interesting battle. It wasn't close by any means, but it showed some very interesting
Praise
tactics.
the Almighty! Our
and some
enemy has lost his stomach to fight. We must push our advantage.
Some missed opportunities that could have really maybe not helped win the battle. I mean, you know, the fact that Venice and the Papal States have come out with so many troops indicates that there was more wrong than just a couple of missed opportunities. You know, the army compositions were a bit funky on this side, and the Byzantines certainly just were not in a great position.
All of Christendom will be awed by the victory we have won here today.
They got really heavily beaten in the cavalry department. And as soon as you lose your cavalry, you lose everything else. So here's the results. This battle was sent in by V.O.C. de Belg. I think he's one of the few people that actually sends me replays, so if you paid attention, you would have known that it was de Belg's battle. But he deployed 1,091 men, and he killed 870, so doing really well on his side against the Byzantines. Then Brothel Bouncer, playing as Venice, bringing 971 men, so slightly less, probably due to the standard. I think the standard only gets 20 men in, or 21 men, so that's why he brought slightly less men. But he killed 717 men and captured 183. So great little kill count there by the Venetians. Benny 971, probably the weak link in this battle, I'm afraid to say, but you know, judging by his army composition and just his overall tactics, you know, they weren't the best, and unfortunately it shows in this battle. He also only deployed 981 men, which for the Byzantines is hard to do. I mean, you know, the Byzantines can bring a full stack of 20 units regardless of how much money there is, so they're really good at bringing full armies, but unfortunately it looks like Benny was missing a few key units, and as they just brought the Latin Con, which meant he probably didn't have enough for upgrades, which is what cost him the infantry fight. But he brought, 981 men, and he killed 345 men with no captures. And then Thracian, bringing the Portuguese, he deployed 1,041 men. He killed 614, so not doing too bad on his side, and only capturing 6 men. Judging by the unit stats, a lot of de Belg's units doing quite well. His infantry obviously didn't get too badly damaged, so that's why the kills are so low. And some of his best units are his Pavis crossbowmen. His Pavis crossbowmen really doing well against the Byzantine guard archers, and a couple of his heavy knights, the Knights Hospitaller. The rest of his units not getting a lot of kills, but to be honest, he broke the army quicker than he could kill it, so that's him. So some, as I say, some interesting points. I did like the use of the mounted crossbowmen. That was really well played by Thracian. And I mean, Thracian's whole cavalry usage was actually pretty good. As it only took you 20 seconds to realise the Papal States were moving forward. It should have been quicker. You should have seen that it was exposed and gone in. The longer you wait, the more time you give your opponent to get into position, which is going to cost you. But he was quite on top of the ball. His Pavis crossbowmen in thin lines was really impressive. He was actually hammering the Venetian archers, the Venetian crossbowmen, and if it wasn't for the rush, he would have had that. But unfortunately, his infantry just was not up to scratch. And again, some great play by the Papal States, the Belg and Brothel Bouncer, realising that the missile engagement on the Venetian flank wasn't doing too well, and thus using their strength, which was their infantry, to engage their opponents. As I say, a great bit of play by all players, and as I say, the fact that Benny may have been new would explain why his kill count isn't as high as it could have been. But the Byzantines don't do well against in this situation anyway. They are not a skirmish faction. If you are trying to use their guard archers to beat Pavis crossbowmen, you are not going to succeed. Pavis crossbowmen win skirmishes, so you really want to use the Byzantines' main strength, which is their infantry, and they can bring a lot of infantry to bring to bear against your opponents and just crush them that way. But again, great game by all players. I hope this has taught all the new players watching this some interesting tactics. Again, observe the battlefield, see what's going on, and utilize mistakes. If you see an exposed flank, take advantage of it. If you've got cavalry spare not doing anything, get it in somewhere, because you cannot afford to have expensive cavalry sitting around doing nothing. If you want to defend a flank from cavalry, use spearmen. Your cavalry is an aggressive tool. Use it aggressively, and you will succeed with it. Anyway, thank you very much for watching this battle, guys, and I shall hopefully see you all in the next video.